But final thoughts on the game. Uh, it's cool. Concept is very cool. Core mechanics are there. They're relatively solid. Uh, it just needs a lot of work. So what I mean by that is, let's start from the top. So just looking at the game itself, the user interface could use a little bit of work. I would prefer if it was customizable, such as you'd be able to change the size of the health bar, your team's health bar, your weapons and ammo, if you could make that smaller or put that wherever you want, and definitely be able to change the size and visibility of subtitles. I think that'd be a very useful thing to change. I actually believe this is it, I just haven't really messed with it, but in addition to all of this stuff, it would be nice if you could change the size of other interface elements. For volume, they definitely need to work on their volume. Having the gunshots not be tied to sound effect in that previous my previous boot of the game was really weird. They need to, if that was just a bug, then it's whatever. I hope they can fix that bug. But if gunshots are actually not tied to sound effects, that needs to be fixed. Other than that, sound balancing is what it is. Video settings. I don't really have any complaints for this and stuff. Just, I think it does run smoother than Vermintide 2, which is pretty cool, or at least stream-wise. I have a lot of issues with streaming Vermintide and having it look nice for some reason. This game does not seem to be that big of an issue. Other than that, in-game combat, very cool. I like the ideas that they have. I like the suppress mechanic where you can fire at enemies and they will run into cover and stop shooting at you. They need to make that more obvious for people. So what happens with the tutorial is you have a very bland tutorial. I'm not going to lie. The tutorial for this game is not great. It's kind of like mini missions like, here, do this, do this, do this. Whereas in Vermintide 2, it was much more organic. You are going through a mission with Marcus Kruber, and you're very slowly introduced to different tasks that you have to complete, and through those tasks you learn how to play the game. If they could implement the same thing for this game, that would be amazing. Mostly just to help retain information. It's a better way for other players to retain information about what you can do. Nobody in this game, in any of my games, was using the suppression mechanic. All of those sharpshooters never really tried to suppress. And I realize that it might be a waste of ammo. They might think it's a waste of ammo, but it is so important, I believe. It will especially be important on the higher difficulties when you're getting hammered. And, you have a bunch of melee classes that can't really approach because they're melting. Implement the things that you want the players to do, but make sure they retain the information needed to do it. Really basic stuff, such as the hiding behind cover mechanic. This big guy, the Ogre class, cannot do that. He gets shot by his head, by his arms, whatever it is. So playing this guy feels pretty bad in terms of when you're playing on higher difficulties. Enemies with ranged weapons will just shred through you. Doesn't really feel that great. The stamina mechanic feels terrible. I don't know what the idea was with the introduction of the stamina mechanic, but if you're going to introduce a mechanic like that, make it useful. Right now, all the stamina mechanic makes it feel like is you run through a hallway and you're sprinting the entire way, but halfway through you run out of stamina and your sprinting obviously slows down. That's what I think. That's what happens. Your movement slows down when you run out of stamina. It just makes every hallway and every traversal section feel that much longer. And when you're busy trying to kite enemies or run away from enemies or, get some distance, even if you have stamina and you're running away, I'm still getting hit. I don't know if that's because of my hitbox as a gigantic Ogren, or if that's universal, but if I'm using stamina to run away from enemies and it doesn't do anything in terms of, giving me distance from enemies, then it's a useless mechanic. There's no need for a sprint system if it doesn't give me any advantages whatsoever in gameplay. It just makes everything feel slower. It makes it feel like a waste of it's really just a waste of a mechanic, and I don't know, I would like to see that improved, but we'll have to see. What concerns me most is they're trying to release this game in a month and a half. I don't really agree with some of the what do you call it? Some of the concepts or some of the implementations that they've done so far. For them to be able to say that they can release this game in a month and a half, I think it's a great concept of a game. It's fun. I don't know if I'd be willing to pay $40 for a game like this at launch. $40 is still cheaper than most AAA titles, which are, I believe, like $70 now. But, like, why would I play this on launch when I have Vermintide 2? Some of the concepts that I don't agree with, but are personal opinions, and, take it with a grain of salt, is I kind of dislike this OC system where you just create your own character, right? And then everybody can play whatever character they want, and, there's no such thing as quote unquote team composition anymore. I liked the rigidity of Vermintide 2, where you had 5 classes and, every team was made of 4 different classes and everyone had a very specific role. I like the structure in games where you're given a specific role to play, right? So, in Final Fantasy XIV, you have a healer, you have a DPS, and you have a tank. I like that because it's very structured. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do. In Vermintide 2, you had a mage, you had the dwarf, who was generally seen as more of a tank class. You had Marcus, who was the knight. You had Saltspire, who used a lot of ranged weapons, and Carillion, who used a lot of ranged weapons, the elf. Each of them played differently, and each of them had, they had a job to do in a team, but every no matter who you played, every team had a composition. In a game like this, where everyone can do whatever they want, it feels a lot less structured, and it just feels a little more chaotic. Now, I understand that because of that, it's a lot easier to get into this game. Hi there. It's a lot easier to get into this game because you don't have to, work on with Vermintide. If 4 people or if the other 3 people chose the only classes you played, then you wouldn't be able to play, right? But with a game like this, you can play whoever you want, and it doesn't matter because no one can quote unquote take your character. I think it's great for introducing new players to, this style of game. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I won't argue that, or I won't push that, because I know that this is just a design choice. It's how the game is meant to be played, or how they chose the game to be played. Similar to Left 4 Dead, you have a group of 4 people who you can choose, but none of those 4 people really do anything differently. So it doesn't matter who you choose in Left 4 Dead. Same thing with this, it doesn't matter who you choose, but each class that you choose does a different thing. I'm assuming on the higher difficulty, such as the like tournament level stuff, level 5 stuff, you're gonna start to see legitimate team compositions. I like his name. You're gonna start to see legitimate team compositions, such as if you get a group of 4 people together to do a specific tournament or like a speed run or whatever, you're going to see like 1 Ogryn, 1 Zealot, 1 Psyker, 1 Sharpshooter. Or if there's a what's the word? If there's a meta, then everyone would run the meta, such as like 2 Sharpshooters, 1 Psyker, and 1 Zealot, something like that. I'm not sure. But for now, I miss the structure of Vermintide 2 in terms of character compositions. Something that's strange to me so far is the feat system. Obviously, I only have 2 levels. I'm only at level 11 right now, so I only get to unlock 2 feats. But reading some of these later feats, in Vermintide you had your level 25, I believe. What? 5, 10, 15, 20, level 30? Or was there only 25? Something like that. The final level of your trait or your feat or whatever it was called in Vermintide 2, it looked like, even just reading it, it would always drastically affect your ability. With this one, I'm seeing the same level with this, at least. The Unstoppable perk for your ultimate ability. But it doesn't really feel like it changes the way that you play the class. So, how do I explain this? In Vermintide, you had even the earliest perks, or the earliest feats, you had such as a healing perk, or if you don't want to spec into healing, you could spec into stagger or stun or extra damage or whatever, and it would very, very drastically change the way that you would play the class. So if you had a healing specific perk, you would hold on to the healing items for your team. If you had stagger perks, then you would choose a weapon, or, you know, at least if you're playing for meta, you would choose a weapon that would stagger more often, or you would work to stagger the enemies. With these perks, or these feats rather, they don't feel like they're that different. Obviously, they all have different abilities and they all have different effects, but for now, my unexperienced, never having tried any of these perks self saying this, just reading by the description alone, it doesn't feel too much like, yes, if I choose this, I have to play this specific way. Or, you know, this looks like it would be meta. It doesn't really feel like that. So, I'm not sure how I feel about this system yet. I'm obviously going to need a lot more time to play through this and be able to actually try these out, and then I could give a more informed opinion about how this feels, but for now, I'm not sure how I feel. I don't think I like it right now. That may change in the future if I get to try out all of these abilities. The weapon system, I think I mentioned this before, but they feel a little heavy. Swinging with melee weapons doesn't feel that great. Obviously, the focus of the game is now on, you want to use more ranged abilities, more ranged weapons. So there's a bigger focus on actually using your gun this time, but melee is still a very big part of this game, and it's very good. Melee is very good. Cough, cough, Back for Blood. Melee sucked in that game, but melee feels good in this game, but there are still some things that feel strange, like charging up a heavy attack and then using it is feels different from Vermintide 2. I'm going to say it feels worse than Vermintide. Other people may disagree, and that's fine, because all of this, in the end, is my personal opinion, but it just feels wonky. When you're pulling out your secondary weapon, your ranged weapon, it also feels very heavy. Instead of Vermintide or Left 4 Dead, where you can, like, mash your Q button or your quick switch button and it would, cycle through your weapons very quickly, this one feels like you have to commit. Like, you have to be sure, yes, I want to switch to my firearm. And then if you press the button, you have to fully commit to it. Otherwise, if you try to switch back, you're wasting time. Something like that. It just feels sluggish. I think that's the best way I can put it. It feels sluggish. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I personally dislike it. Other people may like the idea that you have to commit to your weapon so that you can't just spam between the two, but I don't know. That's how it is for me. Other than that, I'm not sure. Is there anything else I wanted to mention? Let me just double check. I mentioned sprint, I mentioned the user interface, I mentioned weapons, I mentioned classes. Oh, and I guess just a personal thing, which is similar to my distaste for the OC system, where everyone just gets to be their own person, or be their own character. Here's one thing I miss from Vermintide, and that's also it's in Left 4 Dead as well. There's no banter between the characters. So, what do I mean by that? I mean, when you're going through a level, and then when a character such as now I'm forgetting names, such as Marcus would comment on something from Vermintide, and Saltspire's in the party, he would also comment on that. And they would have, like, their own little backstory, or their own fun little, like, in-between joke, even though the two don't really joke to each other, but they have their own, like, their own clique, their own, like, fun little story that they talk with each other, and they both understand it. That's not present in this game. In this game, you have fake banter. What that is you're going through the level, and say my Ogren is speaking about, oh, this would make for great food, or I'm hungry, and then someone else's character would comment with a very basic, generic line that just kind of, it doesn't speak to the character, it's just words coming out of their mouths to fill the empty silence of just traversing through areas. It's not them telling a story, or them, sharing a fun moment with each other. It's words, it's noise to fill the space, and it feels pretty bad when that's all you get. Because I like the character interactions. I like character interactions in games, and I think that they're a pretty important part of world building, or character building, or story building. You get to learn a little bit more about the people that you're playing. With this one, you just, at the beginning of the game, you create your own character, you create their backstory, and then that's it. That's their personality. And no matter what you choose, it seems like you're kind of just locked into, like, 3 or 4 voices, which all have very specific voice lines for very specific situations. There's no character growth in that. I'm not seeing, my Ogren be friendly with the other players on my team. Instead of these guys cracking a joke, and then, something, they mention a story or a plot point, and then they each mention how they were involved in that or something, it's just, oh, funny, me hungry, haha, kill monster, woohoo. It's bland. It's quite frankly bland, boring, and not that fun to see the players, or see the characters just talk with each other in this way. So, I don't know. that's something I'm going to miss. I realize that with the character creation system, that's not, interpersonal character relationships are just not going to be a thing that we get to see. And, that's just something that I will have to come to accept. But it is a little sad to me that they went with this path of being able to create your own character. But who knows? Some people will obviously enjoy it. You get to create your OC and all that, but it's not really quite for me. Anything else? Other than all the obvious bugs, glitches, all that stuff, it's a closed beta. I'm very lenient towards that kind of stuff right now, because they simply want to test if the game works for large amounts of people. But, I think I've aired everything else out. Stop scratching your balls. But yeah, this has been a fun weekend. Unfortunately, the closed beta is going to end, I believe, 3 hours from now? If they're running by Eastern time, which is going to be midnight. But I seriously hope they run another closed beta. It would be great to see where they end up from here. Obviously, I left a survey. I posted my thoughts on this, and I'm going to post my thoughts here as a video as well. But I hope they run another closed beta. Oh. Well, sure, okay, whatever. I hope they run another closed beta. Maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks from now, just to see where they have gone with the improvements. I hope that we see some improvements between now and release. But I disagree with the release being a month and a half from now. I believe, they should take their time with it. 3 months, 4 months, that's fine. I'm okay with waiting, but I understand that this is a product that they want to release because, monetary reasons, right? Financial reasons. They need to make money, they need to push this out. That's just how it is. But it would be a shame to see this game be released early and it's not polished. For me, unfortunately, if the game were to release as is, even if you tell me all the bugs were to be fixed and all that, just going purely off gameplay mechanics, core mechanics, and what we have so far, you could toss in like 20 extra missions on release. I don't think I would be compelled to buy this game at $40. And a very large part of that reason is I have Vermintide 2. I would rather play Vermintide 2. And I guess that's it. I guess I really will just go back to Vermintide 2 once this test ends. But yeah, it is a fun game. I see the values in it. I see the amount of love that they put into it. And I really respect the dev team, Fat Shark. I just it's a tough call for me. It's a tough call. But that's all of my thoughts and opinions so far. Yeah, that's about it. I guess that's where I will be ending it for today. Again, if there is another closed beta, I would very, very happily join a second closed beta. And if there's any improvements, I will obviously, renew my ideas and so on and so forth, my opinions for that. And I'd be willing to stream that again and see, what's changed or what hasn't changed, and I'd remark on that. But yeah, until then, I guess that's it. Peace out. Have a great night. Yeah. Get some water, get some food. Always stay hydrated, The seasons are changing, it's getting a little chillier, so make sure you bundle up. Don't catch a cold. And peace out. I hope you guys have a great night.